After this, Jesus, knowing that all was now finished, said, to fulfill the scripture, "I thirst." A jar full of sour wine stood there, so they put a sponge full of the sour wine on a hyssop branch and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. That's the way the Apostle John depicts some of Jesus' last moments. He's on the very brink of death, just about to give up his life, and he breathes these words, "It is finished." So we might ask, what's finished? Well, his life was finished, and his suffering was finished, but we know that's not what Jesus really meant. These aren't the words of a man at the end of a worn-out life that's fizzling out on the Roman cross for a punishment of some wrongdoing. This is Jesus making a declaration with absolute clarity and confidence that his life's work has been brought to completion. He knew he came into the world with a purpose, and he knew he'd completed that purpose. He'd accomplished what he came to do. Mission accomplished. And we might ask, well, what was that mission? And the book of John gives us lots of clues. Jesus came to show us what God was like. He came as the Son of God to show us what his Father is like. And the one thing that he absolutely longed for us as humankind to know and to see was the truth, to have a true image of what his Father was really like. Now the sad thing is that religion over the centuries has done a lot of stuff to obscure what God is really like. And it's done some good things too. But Jesus never did anything to obscure what his Father was like. He perfectly represented him as he lived his life amongst ordinary people, in ordinary circumstances, in a very ordinary part of the world. And he did it so well that he could point to himself and say, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." Now, the life that he lived in the midst of all this ordinariness was far from ordinary. It was extraordinary. Because he lived in absolute dependence on his Father, like no one else has ever lived. And that, by the way, is how we were designed to live. God never meant for us to be alone, trying to manage life on our own. His desire was always that we would have a deep, abiding sense of presence of someone with us. It's hard work to be boss of your own life, in case you haven't noticed. It's hard work to have to be in control of everything. Now, the opposite of control is trust. And Jesus came to show us that his Father was trustworthy. He came to show us that we could trust in a God who would never let us go, we could live with an absolute security, as deeply seated in the core of our being as it could possibly be, that there's someone bigger than me who holds my life and who loves me and who will never let me go and who can be trusted. And Jesus focused the whole of his life on showing us that God's love can be trusted. He died with his arms wide open, surrendered to the God that he knew loved him. With every fibre in his being, he knew his Father loved him. And he was passionate that we would know that too. He was passionate that we would believe him. And the book of John is full of these invitations of Jesus to believe in him and to believe in his Father, to believe in God. And that kind of believing, it's not some kind of mental assent to a set of doctrines. It's not a mental assent to the existence of God. It's actually a profound experiential realization that God can be trusted. And when we know that, we get plugged in to the source of all love, to the source of all hope, and the source of all life. One of the clearest statements that Jesus makes about his life is when he says, "I have come that you might have life, and life in all of its fullness." And we can look at lots of things to give us life. And maybe in this time of COVID, some of those things have been taken away from you, and it's painful, and it is. It's real, and it's painful. But Jesus was no stranger to pain and suffering. Yet he knew how to trust his Father in the midst of it. And he came to show us how to do that. And he can help us do that. And we can ask him. Jesus died as a human being, just like us, with his arms wide open to God's love, because he knew he could trust him. And so can we.